professional is somebody who earns a livelihood by doing professional work. And if you're not earning a livelihood, then this idea of professionalism, what it means to be professional, is going to ring a little hollow. This is the class of 2011. This is in the ABA transparency, or the transparency movement, and the lawsuits have forced us as a profession, as an education profession, to be very, very transparent. And so you can go to the ABA website and you can download a spreadsheet that's basically a phone book's worth of data, and you can put it into a statistical program. And I think that you can give so much data that you can't. It's kind of like discovery. You got to go through to find out what's relevant. So I have to import it into a statistics program. I said, well, really, what's relevant here? He says, like, if I'm a student, I would want to know what is the full-time, long-term professional opportunities available to me 9 months after I graduate. Give me my odds, professor. Tell me what my odds are. And so if you want to do bar passage required full-time, long-term professional work, 55.2% of the graduates obtain that outcome. 8.1 got JD Advantage, which would be probably something like a human resource person or a contracts manager, where the legal degree definitely helped. 3.9% is professional, but full-time, long-term, but not in the legal industry. So it could have been maybe selling wealth management products for Goldman Sachs or something like that. These two jobs, in the green and the red, pay less money than the bar passage required as a group. And then we've got almost a third of the folks that either don't have professional employment, or they don't have long-term employment, or they don't have full-time employment. So their expectations of professional employment are being disappointed. Now, a lot of commentators have said, well, we just need to close law schools, and they use the U.S. News rankings to say, well, we just need to close the schools that are in the bottom tiers. I think that that's a terrible idea on so many different levels, just because we need to open up and see what law schools are doing. We have some incredible mission-based schools that are doing remarkable work, that are getting very good employment outcomes, even though they don't happen to be held in high esteem by U.S. News and World Report. Broadly speaking, I want to put this in the lens of U.S. News and World Report, because when you put it into that context, and we rate the national schools, of which there's a tendency to focus on the top 14, because since U.S. News started publishing their rankings, the top 14 have played some musical chairs, but that barrier has never been pierced. And so maybe they're indisputably have a national reputation. Then there's the rest of Tier 1. There's Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4. And there's a lot of purple up there. There's a lot of purple up there. And the point I want to make, though, is that the bottom of Tier 1 looks a lot more like Tier 4 than the top 14. This is a crisis. I think Brian Tamaha has it right, and he calls it a crisis. And so I'm describing the world as I find it. I think that Brian is correct. So we have to deal with something. We have to deal with those purple outcomes. And so I want to step back, and I want to go back to what's happening to the legal jobs. And I think I can give you some answer to that. So this is the upside down hockey stick. This is the top of it. This is just the trend line, and it's measured against baseline 1998, which is the first year that the new TAP classification system was in place. And you can see we've got this nice upward trend, and growth is good because it helps us place our graduates, and we like growth. But then growth begins to trail to the right, and then there's this other line which is called all other legal services. So all other legal services is just a catch-all. We don't know what to do with it, so we just put it in the all other services box. And in 1998, all other services comprised 0.9% of the legal industry. Now it comprises about 2.4%, or at least of 2010. And from what I know about who's in this sector, it probably comprises 3 or 4% now, and it's growing very, very rapidly. And Mitt Regan and I were talking earlier about the disaggregation movement, of which this is a big part. That explains a lot of what's going on here. And this really looks like what's called disruptive innovation, which is a framework put together by a professor at Harvard Business School named Clayton Christensen, where basically incumbents have a hard time seeing the next new thing to how they solve their problems, and some new incumbent comes in, or some new entrant comes in and basically can innovate, and the old guard just can't make the transition because their mind is so framed or so stuck on the old way of doing things that was so successful for so long. But you can see that for every new job, and for every 7 jobs lost in law offices, we added 1 in legal services, and these pay about 60% of what these jobs paid. So I'm sure you all would want to know who's in this sector. So I asked a friend of mine who I had some idea who was in it, and I went and talked to this gentleman who's in the legal tech space, and I said, give me the names of the companies you think are big players here that probably are in all other legal services category. And by the way, the Census Bureau breaks it down by geography and by organization size. There's many companies in there that are in the 500 to 1,000 employee range. And they have payrolls that are very, very high. And I'm saying, how can this be? And I have a forthcoming paper that breaks this thing down. But I mean, we're talking about major companies with big payrolls that are in this space. And said, who are these companies? And so I got this list and I gave it to my RA. And I said to my RA, how big are these companies? What are their revenues? How fast are they growing? What's their geographic footprint? What is their business models? And I came up with here's some of the companies that are on the list. The big commonality of all these companies is they're financed by non-lawyers. That's the big commonality. And so 6 of these things are owned by publicly held companies. 2 of them have expressed a preference or an intention to go public, of which LegalZoom has an S1 registration on file with the SEC right now. Kroll on Track, which does predictive coding, is owned by a private equity firm with $27 billion under management. These are traded on NASDAQ. They're traded on the New York Stock Exchange, of which sometimes they're just subsidiaries of broader companies. We've probably heard of Pangea 3, which does legal process outsourcing. That's been rolled into Thomson Reuters, which owns Westlaw. And I think that Thomson Reuters isn't going long on Westlaw. So they have to figure out another business to get in. They're transitioning to a new business. Practical Law Company serves legal departments, and I think that their idea is to have form documents that basically become industry standard. And so it's a kind of a standards play. These are really sophisticated business people, and I've been in the room when some of them have talked about their long-term objectives, and they just salivate at the opportunity to automate and to turn into processes what lawyers have done through an artisan trade. They think it's a huge profit-making opportunity.